Good morning. Today we're going to talk about the Battle of Gettysburg. So we've been talking about the Civil War. This is another battle, probably you may have heard of it before. The standards we'll cover today are Civil War and Reconstruction. We want to understand how key events in the Civil War helped influence the course and outcome of the Civil War. We're also going to cover historical thinking and skills, so analyzing primary and secondary sources to describe different perspectives. All right, last week we started covering the Civil War. We talked about a couple of battles. We talked about the Battle of Vicksburg and the Battle of Chancellorsville. So let's review a little bit. What do you guys remember about the Battle of Vicksburg? Yeah, it was the last major Confederate stronghold, and they had been trying to take it over for over a year. Abraham Lincoln said that taking Vicksburg was going to be key to winning the war. So it was a town on a river, and Grant was able to surround the town so that he could cut off the Confederate supplies and reinforcements. Now we all remember what happens when you don't have supplies coming in. You don't have food to eat. You're stuck. So do you remember how long it lasted? How long did the South hold out? Yeah, it wasn't quite 2 months. It was just a little bit over a month before the South finally surrendered. So that was a major Northern victory. Now, the Battle of Chancellorsville was happening close to the same time. It was a major Southern victory. So do you remember anything else about that battle? Yeah, the Union was disorganized. They just switched generals, and they had way more troops than the South for this battle. So General Lee actually had made a tactical decision to split his troops into two parts so that one attacked from one side, one attacked from the other side, so that the Union troops were stuck in the middle. Then he had his little right-hand man, Stonewall Jackson, split off again and go right up the middle and essentially taking out the Union troops. But Stonewall Jackson was killed during this battle. So after this victory, Lee is thinking he's on a roll. He's going to go up and he's going to start taking over in the north. He's invading. So he starts heading towards Pennsylvania. So General Grant's troops are already in Gettysburg. Lee's troops head up that way, and they meet just outside the town of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Now, do you guys know anything about the Battle of Gettysburg? Ever heard of it? I mean, it's kind of famous. A lot of people have heard of it. Yes. It is a town in Pennsylvania. There's actually a really cool Civil War battlefield and museum and tours that you can take there. Anybody know anything else? Aha, the Gettysburg Address. Yeah, that was a really famous speech that Lincoln gave afterward, and we'll talk about that later. Okay, right now, we're going to watch a video to sort of introduce the Battle of Gettysburg, and then we'll move on to some other activities.
There was nothing very civil about the American Civil War. It was a long, bloody conflict that nearly tore our young nation apart. Nicole reports on the battle that was a key turning point in American history.
Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. These days, it's a peaceful place to visit, and millions of people do come now to look and to imagine what it was like in July of 1863.
It's an amazing battle, the Battle of Gettysburg. It's the greatest battle ever fought in the Western Hemisphere. The clash of those armies, more than 150,000 men in this tiny little town in south central Pennsylvania.
Ironically, it was a battle that no one expected to take place.
General Lee had a bold idea, which was to take his army out of Virginia and to head north into the Pennsylvania countryside. He was going to attack northern cities.
Lee hoped by invading the North, people would panic and force President Lincoln to end the war. But then, General Lee's Army of the South ran smack into General Meade's Union Army of the Potomac.
They met here almost by accident, but once they engaged with each other here, there was no stopping the battle.
On July 1st, the first heavy fighting took place here on McPherson's Ridge. Over here were the Confederate soldiers, advancing towards the Union soldiers facing them. Soldiers hid behind stone walls, wooden fences, anything that would give them cover from the murderous blaze of bullets and cannonballs. For 3 days of fierce fighting, the army struggled for the advantage of higher ground. Big battles raged for small pieces of territory, like hills and ridges.
On our left is Little Round Top. It's about just under a mile away, and that was the far left of the Union Army. And of course, the Confederates attacked both ends of the Union line.
John Krebs has been a battlefield guide here for 12 years. He knows where every move was made. Where are we here?
We are on Seminary Ridge, which is actually part of the Confederate battle line of July 2nd and July 3rd of the battle. The Confederates did capture much of the forward ground you see out in front of you, but positions along the main Union line, including Little Round Top here, held and were maintained by Union troops.
On the last day, a massive final effort, an attack named after its commanding general, George Pickett.
Approximately 13,000 Southern soldiers would form battle lines that stretched over a mile along this ridge. They would advance across the open fields through Union cannon fire to try to break the center of the Union line, but the attack did not succeed.
Pickett's charge was a noble but futile charge. The losses were staggering. General Lee was forced to retreat under cover of darkness.
It is really spelling the end of the Confederacy, the end of this rebellion.
The toll of dead and wounded at Gettysburg, 51,000. The war went on for 2 more years, but the Army of the South never got any further north than Gettysburg. Thanks for watching Teen Kids News. Be sure to tune in to Teen Kids News this week. Here's what you'll see. That and more coming up on Teen Kids News.
All right, I think that was a pretty good introduction to the Battle of Gettysburg. Now, it could have left you with some more questions. I want you to take a second and write down any questions that you still have about the Battle of Gettysburg. Okay, now we're going to do a think, pair, share activity. So I want you to go into Schoology, and there is a list of resources in the folder for today. You can go to any of those websites. You can use those resources. You can also use resources online, but remember our tips for how to evaluate a resource. So while you're there, I want you to answer your own questions, any questions you just jotted down, define all the unit vocab that's listed in another folder in Schoology, and then I want you to think about why Gettysburg might be important. So I am going to have you work on that for a few minutes. Then I'm going to put you in pairs. When you guys have finished your research, you'll share it with each other, and then you're going to share it with the class. And that we're really learning a lot about the Battle of Gettysburg. All right, now I found a really interesting primary source. There was a boy in the town of Gettysburg during the battle named Daniel Skelly. He was about your age, 12, 13. And he kept a journal and wrote down his thoughts about what was going on during the battle. It is called A Boy's Experience During the Battle of Gettysburg. So we are going to read an excerpt today. I am going to call on people to read. If you don't want to read, that's fine. I'll call on volunteers. But remember that you do need to use your see it, touch it, hear it while we read if you don't want to read aloud. Okay, I will start. Our town, being in the hands of Confederates and cut off from all communication with the outside world, we knew nothing about our army. We were completely in the dark as to how it was located and how much of it had arrived on the field. The Confederates maintained a clam-like silence on matters concerning the battle. Hence, we did not know the significance of this tremendous cannonading until after the battle was over. But for the present, it sent everyone to the cellars as a matter of protection. Mr. Harvey D. Waddles lived close to my father's, and under his house was a large dry cellar. During the cannonading, the neighbors congregated in a place of safety. An incident that occurred in this house will give you some idea of why the families were exposed to the fighting that was in progress. A neighbor had come into the house to take refuge and brought with her a bandbox containing a bonnet. When the cannonading began, she went to the cellar, placing the box on a chair upon which she had been sitting. When she came from the cellar, she found the box where she had left it, but a mini ball had passed through the box and the bonnet. Now, I thought that was really interesting to see the Battle of Gettysburg from the perspective of somebody who was your age who was there. And it sounds really scary, doesn't it? Okay, so tonight, I want you to go back into that Schoology folder, look over some of those resources. There's a specific page that I've marked that says homework. I want you to look at that one. It has a bunch of different maps of the battlefields that kind of gives you an idea of where things were happening. Like you can hear about, Pickett's charge and this, but it's hard to visualize until you see the map. So I do want you to look over those maps just to give you an idea. There's also a timeline of events because it kind of helps keep straight what happened when during the 3-day battle. And then there's links to 2 more websites that you can look at. Now, I want you to do that tonight so that tomorrow you can work on our class project. We are going to write a letter or a newspaper article. So you're going to pretend that you're Daniel Skelly. There's a battle near your home. You can pretend it's in Marlington, where we live. You can pretend that you're in Gettysburg, where he was. Now, I want you to think about things like, what would you be doing? What would your role be? Would you be out in the battle like the drummer boys? Would you be hiding in the basement like Daniel Skelly with his family? What do you think it would be like? How would you feel about it? What would it be like for the people around you, for your family, your friends, your neighbors? What would the Marlington area look like after the battle? Or what did Gettysburg look like after the battle if you want to pretend you're in Gettysburg? I do want you to give specific examples from the reading and the online resources. So we will talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. So now to conclude, why was the Battle of Gettysburg important? Yeah, it was the bloodiest battle of the Civil War. It was also a turning point, and actually, it's still the bloodiest battle ever fought on American soil. Now, because of this turning point, the Union gave them confidence. The Union gained confidence, but the South was feeling downtrodden. Now, did you think the lesson was effective? What do you guys feel that you learned? What could be done differently? And after today, do you have any new questions? All right, next, we're going to talk about Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, right? That's like the famous speech that Lincoln gave. Then we're going to go on to talk about the Battle of Atlanta and then the Sherman's March to the Sea, which is famous, but you may not know about it yet. So have a good afternoon, and I'll see you tomorrow.